Good morning and welcome to today's almost daily devotional. We see in this today's passage the return of our friend King Herod. He King Herod is the star of this chapter, um, and we're in chapter 12. And chapter 12 is sort of the end of a little section of Acts, so you can sort of cut Acts in half. And the first half of Acts is the story of Peter and the early church and the early Christians who served with Jesus, who spent time with Jesus. And then the second half of Acts is the story of Paul. So this is the transition point. So let's hear the story about Herod and Peter. About that time, King Herod began to harass some who belonged to the church. He had James, John's brother, killed with a sword. When he saw that this pleased the Jews, he arrested Peter as well. This happened during the festival of unleavened bread. He put Peter in prison, handing him over to 4 squads of soldiers, 16 in all, who guarded him. He planned to charge him publicly after the Passover. While Peter was held in prison, the church offered earnest prayer to God for him. The night before Herod was going to bring Peter's case forward, Peter was asleep between 2 soldiers and bound with 2 chains, with soldiers guarding the prison entrance. Suddenly, an angel from the Lord appeared, and a light shone in the prison cell. After nudging Peter on his side to awaken him, the angel raised him up and said, "Quick, get up." The chains fell from his wrists. The angels continued, "Get dressed. Put on your sandals." Peter did as he was told. The angel said, "Put on your coat and follow me." Following the angel, Peter left the prison. The next morning, the soldiers were flustered about what happened to Peter. Herod called for a thorough search. When Peter didn't turn up, Herod interrogated the guards and had them executed. Afterwards, Herod left Judea in order to spend time in Caesarea. On the scheduled day, Herod dressed himself in royal attire, seated himself on the throne, and gave a speech to his people. Those assembled kept shouting over and over, "This is a god." Immediately an angel from the Lord struck Herod down because he didn't give the honor to God. He was eaten by worms and died. So it's an interesting end to the story of our friend Herod here. Bible scholars are and historians are always looking for times when stories from the Bible can be confirmed by outside of the Bible's sources. So things that resources that they can discover from other places that are not from the Bible. So it's basically a confirmation from historical records. And what's interesting about this story is Josephus, who was a very famous historian who was writing at the time, confirms that this is how Herod died. That Herod died because he was lauded as a god by the people, and he refused to tell them, "No, I'm not a god," um, and to give glory to God instead of to take the glory for himself and claim himself as a god. Josephus confirms that this is the interpretation the people had at the time. And so the Bible and the historical records on this point agree. And it's also interesting because the story of Peter is a common version of a storytelling device in the early 1st century AD. And so you'll find it in other places, in Greek stories and in Egyptian stories and in throughout the Middle East. This idea of a hero being imprisoned and then set free by angels. And it's a story that's supposed to confirm that the person who is set free by the angels is holy. So it's interesting that this story is confirmed in so many different places. We see it appear in so many different places. It can give us confidence of the truth of the story. Now Herod finally got his comeuppance. He's been causing trouble for a long time, 40 or 50 years at this point. And he gets his comeuppance because the people lauded him as a god, and he didn't say, "No, I'm not a god." He didn't take his rightful place. He didn't acknowledge that he was just a person like they were, in a different position, but a person. And he took God's place. And we see God get really upset about this a lot in the Bible. Anytime somebody claims for themselves the glory that should be God's, or they claim that their success or their whatever is because they are God-like. So we have to be careful about how we talk about people and how we think about human people, and that we don't replace God with people who are human and are fallible and capable of mistakes. God is God, and Herod was not. God bless.